Hello, good morning, and welcome to Sunrise. I am Nelta Egbe. Today is the 5th day of April, 5 days into a new month, and indeed the beginning of a second quarter. It's been an eventful first quarter, and this is the first edition of Sunrise for this quarter. Welcome. We're going to be looking at quite a number of things. This week has been a week full of activity at the national conference and in our daily lives. Every one of us has had to go about our various activities, and we've succeeded, had several challenges: power supply, traffic congestion, and indeed yesterday was fantastic in Lagos. The traffic was awesome. It was off the hook. Yes, the traffic situation. Some people got home at about 2 a.m. What was the problem? You might be asking, and I wish I had all the answers, but I can't give you all the answers because it was indeed, as some would say, negatively off the hook. You could not get to anywhere you wanted to get to in less than 20 minutes, unless you're walking. And if you have to walk, be sure you're moving from your house to the next house. But the traffic situation was everywhere. What was the problem? We'll get to find out somehow. I think we're going to be talking to the Lagos State government in the course of the program. Let's find out exactly what happened, what caused all that traffic yesterday. But then, we're looking at a number of things today. In our menu, we have the state of the nation, what's happening in the nation across board, security situation, national conference, what is going on, what is the situation of things. Then we'll move on to talk about the situation, the mast policy in Lagos, urban furniture situation in Lagos. We'll be looking at that as well. And then preventing the Ebola spread. Now, when that news broke from some parts of Africa, a lot of people began to wonder, this is not the first time we heard about the Ebola disease, but then what is the situation in terms of cure? One of those that helped to discover the Ebola virus even came up to say that up till now, they're still to find a cure for the Ebola virus. The best way to handle it is just to prevent it as best as you can. Well, these are some of the things we'll be looking at. Ehingbeti, that's the Lagos Economic Summit, is happening in this coming week. We'll be looking at that as well. What is the focus? The theme of this year is generally focused on power generation and supply, how it affects the economy in Lagos. And then finally, Smart Communications Nigeria. We have a full house from beginning to end, and I'm sure you will not regret sitting down with us throughout this morning and looking at the different things we'll be looking at today. Now, we'll go on a quick break, and when we'll come back, we'll hit the road running. Don't go away. Welcome back. As you can see, our focus at this first segment is the state of the nation. But I'm also sure that you're wondering why I'm here alone. Or why I'm here. Your regular anchors are unavoidably absent, but I'm sure they'll be here by next week, Saturday. Anyway, we're focusing on the nation, and the national conference is one of the areas we'll start, where we will start as we look at the state of the nation. Delegates at the ongoing conference this week decided to adopt the 70% as a consensus instead of the 2/3 or 3/4 as was earlier proposed. It was a key decision. They also took out, rescinded some decisions they had made earlier. They also the conference resolved that the chairman of the conference will now be the one to pick the chairman for each of the committees that will be set up, instead of the earlier proposal that each committee would choose its own chairman. Now, this past week, they've focused on the president's opening speech, where he talked about the focus of the conference, the essence of the conference, and the focus on the areas which they should look at. And there are some people who are worried that they might be going to those areas the president said they should not go to. Anyway, these are some of the things we'll be looking at today, and I have some gentlemen in the studio with me. Professor Tunde Fatunde is the President, Association of University French Lecturers in Nigeria. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Professor Joseph Abugu, Professor of Commercial and Industrial Law, University of Lagos. Thank you for coming, sir.
Thank you.
And Mr. Simon Mefiele, a social commentator. Thank you for coming. Well, gentlemen, let's begin with a general look at the national conference. Let me begin with you, Professor Abugu. What's your opinion right now as we stand?
Well, I have always been of the view that the national conference as presently constituted is faulty in a number of respects. But that is not to say that nothing good can come out of it. Indeed, however poor Nazareth was, the Messiah came from Nazareth. However faulty the composition of the National Conference in terms of the representative nature of the various diverse groups and nationalities, and indeed interest groups, I still believe something good can still come out of this National Conference. That's my first take on it. The other thing I want to talk about is with this respect of this issue of 70% voting majority rule. Yes, they were unable by way of consensus to agree on a two-thirds majority. And then, of course, 75% is so far away. And 70% has been agreed as a consensual, middle position, But my fear still remains. And again, it also has to do with the composition and constitution of the conference itself. My fear still remains with respect to the voice of the minorities. The minorities of the Niger Delta, the minorities of the South-South, the minorities of the Middle Belt. We've carried on for a very long time, imposing the supreme wish as it is of the major three ethnic nationalities, the Hausas, the Yorubas, and the Igbos. And I think that a lot of the discontent in present-day Nigeria is with respect to the interests of minorities. A situation where the composition of the conference as it is today does not give full vent for the minorities to have their say and have some of their issues addressed may still not solve the Nigerian problem.
Okay, Professor Patunde, the things he's talked about, faulty nature of the conference, but still likely to come forth with something. And the vexations or the anger or agitations we find now is simply because the minorities are not given voice. Do you agree with this?
Well, before answering that question, with your permission, please, let me just briefly look at the existence, the reason for this national conference, just briefly, and linking it up with the inauguration speech by President Jonathan Goodluck. It's also very important because this will also be debated in the whole thing. One, this national conference is coming at a time when Nigeria is 100 years old. The whole amalgamation treaty that brought us together. It's very significant. Very significant in the sense that no nation is natural. All nations are products of wars. All nations in the world. And when their existence becomes a reality, there's a need for those who have found themselves in that nation state to try and fashion a way out. So the national conference is in line with what has happened in all nations of the world. How do we look at the past? What do we do presently? And what do we need to do in the future? So the national conference has come at a time when Nigeria is 100 years old, very significant. Now, what is the future, especially in this 21st century? Now, there are three basic issues. The first one by my learned professor and colleague. Yes, the minority question is extremely very important in the history of Nigeria. For two reasons. It was the leaders of the minorities that prevented the disintegration of Nigeria in 1966, first and second coup. And Gowon, being a minority, was also rallied around by the minority leaders in what we know today as Niger Delta, globally. And that has always been the case. And from this minority discussion, two fundamental issues have also historically played out itself. First, the bulk of the fighting ranks of the Nigerian military are mostly from Middle Belt, we know it today, and also partly from Niger Delta, the bulk of it. And by historical circumstances, today it is the Niger Delta that is the breadwinner of Nigeria in terms of crude oil. And so the soldiers from the Middle Belt, the oil from the Niger Delta, are partly what is keeping the country going. However, there are other fundamental issues. If we want to talk about the national question in Nigeria, briefly put, two fundamental issues. One, fiscal federalism. Very important. Two, the role of education in Nigeria's 21st century, education that is, the economy of the world today is run by what we know as knowledge economy. Simply put, it is not the raw materials that would guarantee the survival of this country in 21st century. It is building the human capacity of Nigeria. And when we say human capacity, we are talking about using the resources available to Nigeria to ensure that education and training become the major priority of the Nigerian state, both local, regional, and central level. Very important, because if we don't use the resources now to train to build up the human capacity of Nigeria, when oil becomes irrelevant, Nigeria is also, by implication, will become irrelevant. So the issue we should be discussing now, also to resolve the issue my learned colleague has just declared, which is extremely very important, is that this country should make sure that it uses the resources available to it now to make education and training the highest priority, because it will have multiplying effects. Then we'll be talking of Nigeria, South Korea. Then the issue of minorities will no longer be the question. Then the issue of development of Nigeria will be the question, because, to conclude partly what I'm saying, there are two elements in life, there are two elements of nature that are extremely very important to all of us, whether Nigerians or else: oxygen and water. Whoever created this world has made it available to all of us. What we now need is to use these resources to make sure that the vast majority of Nigerians can benefit from education and training. If we don't seize that opportunity, whatever may be the outcome of the national conference will thin into irrelevance and insignificance. Thank you.